As a Green Beret who served on missions around the world, Tim Kennedy has experienced a lifetime of violence, chaos, and warfare. He channeled those painful experiences into a life of service. Tim runs multiple companies and recently rescued Americans trapped in Ukraine, Israel, and Afghanistan. Here at home, he started a school that teaches students to stand up against the war of ideas waged within America. This conversation will leave you wanting to build resilience, push your limits, and embrace your God-given gifts. Who are you, Tim Kennedy, and how did you become the person that you are?
Man, who am I? I'm an entrepreneur. I own a bunch of companies. I'm an active military member. I'm a Ranger, sniper, a Green Beret, combat veteran, Iraq, Afghanistan. I was a professional fighter for nearly 2 decades, fighting for the world title a couple of times. I'm a black belt. I'm a father. I now, as best I can, I'm trying to be a good human. So there's a lot of philanthropic efforts where I'm trying to work in education. I own some schools, and we're about to open a whole bunch more. We're going to abolish the Department of Education. Mark my words. But most of all, I'm a husband and a father and a believer.
So many things I want to talk to you about. And so for those who are listening in, I hope they're patient because I think it's totally worth zoning into this conversation. I want to start with your experience in the military and most recently, what you've been doing, what you've been seeing around the world. Can you give me a little bit of a report? Let's start with Ukraine.
Man, that's a mess.
You went there.
I've been there a bunch of times. Our team from Save Our Allies, we were there before Putin got there.
So this is the nonprofit side of what you do. You didn't go in as a Green Beret.
No, I did not. I was, for league 100%, I was there as a volunteer with no official capacity. There were no boots on the ground in Ukraine during the initial invasion. So just to be real clear about language there, because precision of language matters. The U.S. government will have me fill a role to help what they need to have done. And sometimes that's in uniform. Sometimes that's as Tim Kennedy going and addressing a military base that's struggling with mental health and suicide. Sometimes that's as an NGO where, no, I'm not in any official capacity, but they're I'm in the military. They can tell me what I can and can't do. So I'm there, not with their permission, but with their allowance. In Ukraine, we're the same mechanisms that you're going to be smuggling or evacuating people out of a humanitarian crisis are the same methods that you're going to be bringing humanitarian aid in. So we Save Our Allies, we learned to subscribe to this idea about never sending in an empty plane and never leaving with an empty plane. So if I'm going to be flying a plane in there, I'm going to be bringing in the things that I need and the things that they need. And then I'm going to be leaving with people that we want to get off the battle zone. Because these contested conflict areas, the last thing you want, like in Israel, is people in the way. So when I was in Ukraine, we were confirming that humanitarian aid was getting to the front lines. We were confirming that war crimes and atrocities had been committed. So we were providing proof of that. And we were evacuating vulnerable people out of Ukraine. And then in some instances, we were doing rescue operations. So Benjamin Hall was a Fox News correspondent that was struck and his team was killed, and Benji was dying in Ukraine. And the Save Our Allies team went and found him. And then in the middle of the invasion, evacuated him out, crossed country lines into Poland, put him on a military helicopter, flew him to a military base, flew him from that military base to a military hospital where they saved his life.
From somebody who's actually been there, what do you think Americans should know about this situation?
It's complicated. It's they need to know that first and foremost. You do not understand Ukraine and the conflict with Russia because you're listening to insert your favorite news source. CNN has not explained it to you, and Fox News has not explained it to you. They're doing their best to give the information that they want you to have. And truly, the American government has not given you the fair information about what it's like. So the oligarchs ultimately run the country. So Zelensky has a bunch of different, imagine them being cartels or mafia members that have their own versions of military that support Zelensky. He's the most powerful person there. And the aid that comes into Ukraine is then given to these groups. And those groups better support Zelensky or sends him to the front lines. They are in a dire situation in manpower. So the military-aged men between 15 and 45, there's barely any of them left. And the only reason that we have seen success, when I say we, it's fighting communism. Like, I'm not pro-war, I'm not pro-anything, but I'm definitely anti-communism. I don't want it to succeed anywhere, and I definitely don't want our near-peer adversaries to gain even more resources like the resources that exist in Ukraine. Man, what do I want Americans to know is that you don't know anything about Ukraine. And I don't want to see any of our sons and daughters go over there and die.
You just got back from Israel.
Yeah.
Why did you go there?
Because people were trapped and needed help. In the past 3 years, I have spent 6 months on the Mexican border. I was part of the evacuation of Afghanistan. I was in Ukraine shortly after the initial invasion. And then we arrived. I mean, we tried to get into Israel the day of the attack on October 7th, but flights were being canceled and it took time for us to get there. We thought that conflict area was going to escalate way faster than it has. I thought Israel would immediately go into Gaza. That would set off the West Bank. Then you would see neighboring countries would be supporting these insurgents. And that was what these terrorists wanted. This is why they went and killed 1,400 people. This is why they raped, tortured, and murdered 80% of everybody that they killed. Was they were trying to an illicit response. And I thought that response was going to happen a little bit faster. And the last thing that you want in what would then be an entire war zone is Americans, civilians stuck there. And that's what happened. You know, we have 40 to 60,000 Americans that tour to Israel every single day, on average. So you have, I want to see where Jesus was baptized. I want to walk the streets of Jerusalem. I want to go to the Western Wall. There's so much rich history there that, of course, it's where the vast majority of believers want to go and see where their faith originated. And then they're trapped there. There's no way for them to get out. You know, American Airlines is like, we're canceling flights, United. And I totally get it. I'm not throwing stones at the airline carriers because we just saw the worst horrific attack in Israel's history. And they've had some pretty horrible, I mean, that's saying something when you look at the intifadas and you look at the countless wars they've had since 1948. It's like no surprise that one, it happened again, but the way that it happened was something totally different. So we wanted to get those people off the battle space so that if a war did escalate, one, we would already be there so we could provide help and resources in the appropriate ways to our ally. And then two is to get as many Americans to safety as we could.
You've seen wars all over the world. People are accusing Israel of disproportionate response of war crimes against humanity in their response for what happened on October 7th. You went there, you had boots on the ground. What did you see? Was there a disproportionate response? Were you surprised and shocked by the way the Israelis responded? Were you surprised and shocked by the way the Gazans responded? Yeah. Can you just describe this to me?
There's a lot of questions
unbiased. I know.
Yeah, so I have no affiliation to Israel. You know, I'm an American soldier. I'm an American. I have no family members connected to Israel. I have never in any way, shape, or form practiced Judaism. Like I know nothing about it. So this is coming from just my experience of what I saw. I'll kind of go in reverse order of the questions that you just said. What was I surprised by Israel's response? Absolutely. If I were in their shoes, having just experienced that attack, I would have pushed Gaza into the sea. That's what I would have done. They have been so much more strategic and disciplined in the way that they're prioritizing targets and executing targets. Pearl Harbor, 15 times, 20 times worse per capita what happened on October 7th, except the people at Pearl Harbor were just attacked by planes. These people were raped and tortured, but it was 20 times the number in comparison. We dropped 2 atomic bombs on them. You're talking about fair and proportionate response? That's what America did when we learned that they were not going to give up, that they weren't going to quit. We're like, Cool. Send it. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, enjoy those. Like, we're going to drop 2 nuclear weapons on you. That's proportionate response when you attack us. I think that's fair. Identifying military targets that are housing bad guys, and the bad guys are protecting themselves with civilians, that's the bad guy's fault. That's the terrorist's fault. People are trying to create a moral equivalency to Israel's response to the terrorist attacks to Palestinians attacking the Israelis. The Palestinians were attacking specific civilian targets and then torturing them. That was their intent, was to find civilians, to torture, rape, and kill them. Israel is trying to find military strategic targets and attack those targets. Those are so dissimilar on the spectrum of what war looks like. They're on the opposite ends. These are evil assholes, and this is a military trying to identify strategic targets to try to prevent future attacks that involve rape, torture, and murder. So I really struggle with anyone that ever tries to make this argument or this moral equivalency about the response. It makes no sense. And I wish I could disentangle my military mind and just use this human spirit. But I have seen war firsthand. And I'm telling you that if Tim Kennedy was in charge of the response, it would not have been anywhere near as cautious, strategic, and patient. I would have been scorched earth, salted fields response.
This concept of proportionate response, I've never heard about it. It seems like a bizarre term to me. When do you go into a war and say, I intend on winning the war and at the same time making sure that they have less casualties than my military? Is this a new thing? Why is it being applied to Israel?
It's being applied to Israel because they're Jews. Those are mutually exclusive things. If you're saying I'm having a proportionate response and I want to win a war, you cannot win a war with proportionate response. There is one way to win a war, and that is to kill more of them so they're incapable of fighting the war. If you're hey, what is the purpose of the United States military? It's to be the most lethal fighting force on the planet, to be better at killing than everybody else. There's a natural deterrence that goes with that, but then heaven forbid that we have to go to war. When we go to war, there's a hell and a fury that comes with us that is so daunting, that is so impressive, that is so fearsome. There's I'm out, just take it. This idiotic idea of proportionate response is a talking point in an effort to take the legs and effort out of the Israeli response to the terrorist acts on October 7th. What I saw on the ground, we were in the immediate adjacent kibbutzes just outside of Gaza. We're going and with police officers that lost 50% of their department trying to respond to the terrorists and push them back into Gaza. I didn't answer the question when you asked if I was surprised by the response. I was surprised by the Israelis' response, which I answered. The Palestinians' response when the terrorists returned was absolute elation. There was praise and rejoicing in the streets when those terrorists returned back to Gaza. They just went and raped and tortured 1,400 people, and they are welcomed as heroes. There's a problem there.
This moral relativism or the justification of murder and killing, that is ultimately going to impact Americans too. But when people say, let's not worry about what's happening outside of America, we have our own borders to worry about.
Yeah.
I think that there is a point that we need to worry about our own borders. And you have served at our borders as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our geographically close problems because they're significant.
Yeah. They're so much more significant than I think most Americans understand. If you will go to one of the border states, like Texas, where I live, it is one of the largest issues for everyone that lives there. Like if you have land on the southern border, you are experiencing an indescribable humanitarian crisis on your own property. You're fighting. There's this beautiful book called The New Rules of War. And we are currently at war with China, Russia, Iran, and the cartels. The way that Americans want to fight war is the way that we fought war in World War II. like state on state, right? These big, large maneuver elements, uniformed bad guys, uniformed good guys. They're meeting in an agreed area and they're competing over this contested area. That's the war that we're really good at. That's where like America's might can be brought to bear. That's not the war that we're fighting right now. The war that we're fighting on the southern border right now is against non-state actors that are being supported by states. The fentanyl that's being snuck across the border by these Mexican cartel members, that is being supplied by China. Why would China want fentanyl in America? Because it is crazy addictive and it's killing us, and it's a very fantastic way to destroy your enemy, to poison your enemy from within. So on the border, I'll just give you an example of a night. We have Border Patrol, we have Texas Department of Public Safety, and we have Texas National Guard. Texas Department of Public Safety and National Guard are controlled by the state and by the governor. They have competing missions than what Border Patrol does. Border Patrol is treating everybody that crosses that border as if they came in via a port of entry, as if you were just crossing legally, like through Tijuana, which is crazy, right? Like, hey, welcome. You need to come to this this jurisdiction to see this judge on this day in 5 years from now, to understand what your immigration process is going to look like. They just allow them in and they can go into the interior. That's Border Patrol. At the same time, you have Texas DPS and Texas National Guard that is treating that border like a proper sovereign border, i.e. you cannot cross here. You have to go to a port of entry and you have to cross legally. Like, they're not doing anything besides enforcing the law that is not just state, but also federal law. On these nights, across the river from us, there'll be 300 or 400 immigrants. They're all getting positioned by human traffickers. Every single one of those people, whether they came from Central America, like Guatemala, or they came from South America, from like Colombia or Brazil or Venezuela, or they're foreign nationals that are coming from China or from the Middle East, or they're violent extremist insurgents that are trying to sneak across the border. They're all mixed in there. They're all in this group of 300-400 people, right? They're getting positioned by the traffickers. The traffickers are going to move them all across the river at the same time in a shallow point, or a mostly shallow point. So what we have is this huge logistical operational problem, a resource drain, where we have to have enough people to process these people, to try to stop these people, to prevent them from drowning in the river. And while that's happening, 1 mile up the river, there's 5 guys with backpacks full of fentanyl. And the moment that these people go into the water to cross illegally, they hop in the water to cross and smuggle these drugs across. Now, right when we're about to try and interdict these people, one of these traffickers, the human traffickers, will walk up to this beautiful mom with a baby on her shoulders and a toddler in her arms. He'll grab the baby, throw it in the water, grab the toddler, throw it in the water. And what do you think we're going to do?
Save the baby.
That's right. Yeah. Do you think body armor floats? Nah. We're going in the water. Those soldiers are jumping in the drink to save these kids. That's exactly what the human traffickers want. All the while, we're having to send even more resources to now 400 people with babies in the water. The mom, of course, is going to go try to, now the mom's drowning. The dad, who was being cool, has now lost his mind, and he doesn't know he's fighting one of the guys because he's trying to find the baby, but the guy's trying to find, like, the chaos times 400. The traffickers are just laughing. And then a mile up the river, 5 guys just got onto American soil with 5 backpacks full of fentanyl, which is enough to kill the entire city of Chicago. That's every night. Every night. Tens of thousands of people are crossing that border illegally.
I want to ask the dumbest and most common sense question I can come up with, and that is, why isn't the U.S. military involved in this? Because you mentioned Border Patrol, you mentioned a bunch of different agencies. When I think about real security and, real savvy and intelligence and all of these things that can solve this problem, I think about the U.S. military. But you don't mention the U.S. military when it comes to our very own border. Our U.S. military is out there fighting in Ukraine and around the world, but we're not using our very own best to protect our borders.
It's hard to have security and stability worldwide. Everywhere that we are, it's stable and secure. Right? That's why we stayed in Japan. That's why we stayed in Germany. And that's why we're going to stay in Afghanistan and Iraq for a long period of time. We, as a capitalist country, want to do trade. And where there are stable and secure nations, we can have trade with them. When it's like chaos and Marxism and anarchy, like not doing a lot of trade with Venezuela right now. So our military is hurting for people right now. The recruiting problems. For the first time in 20 years, we're not actively at war, even though we're at war with more peer adversaries than any time in my lifetime. There's also the constitutional question. And as a constitutionalist and a libertarian, like, do I want American military members on American military soil? That means that a property owner on the Texas border would have to allow that American military member to be on their property, to fly drones, to bring military surveillance equipment. There's some security and I think intrusion questions that would have to be answered and that would have to unpack. And that would be a different thing. Like, as a Texan, if you think that you're going to be flying drones over my property, we're going to have a problem, and it's also against the Constitution. So we have to have a secure border. You're not a sovereign nation without a secure border. Do we have a secure border right now? Absolutely not. It's a sieve. Everything is coming through. Terrorists are coming through. Our enemies' spies are coming through. Drugs are coming through. Human traffickers are smuggling children both directions. It's absolutely a wide open border right now. And there have been many solutions. Trump's wall was a great one. It forced choke points where they would have to cross at specific places, or they would have to use other means or methods to try and get over or through the wall, all of which are easy to detect. I don't know why the military is not there. It'd be a hard conversation for us to have, and resources, personnel, recruiting, and the legality of it, I think, are 4 big questions we'd have to be able to answer.
Do you think it's a numbers issue, that there's not enough people in the U.S. military in order to put them at our borders? Or is it more of a federal issue where the United States needs to designate that the U.S. military needs to go there because we're effectively at war?
Yeah.
Right? It's an unconventional war, but it's a new type of war.
Yeah.
I mean, the cartels, they are bringing terrorism into the United States, right? So the fact that they're called cartels and maybe not designated specifically as terrorists, is that the issue? Is it like a label and a designation, and that's why we're not protecting ourselves?
Yes to all of that. Yes, we have personnel and manning problems. Yes, we have recruiting problems. Yes, we have retention problems. Yes, we have administratively from the executive office right now a problem calling a spade. In this instance, the cartels are our enemies and we are at war with them, but we're not treating them as real adversaries. We're treating this like a humanitarian crisis, which it is, but it's a humanitarian crisis intentionally caused by people that are trying to kill us and smuggle drugs into our nation. So, let's go at them.
Yeah, and smuggle terrorists into our nation. Like you mentioned, that it's not just refugees from Latin America, but there are military-age men that are coming into the United States, and we're just like, we send our welcome committee and give them a piece of paper and say, see you in court. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you see pictures of federal police officers picking up barbed wire to let people into America. That's wholly un-American. Go to a point of entry and legally cross into America. If you have a claim to be here and if you want to become an American, there is a process for you to go through. What you can't do is illegally cross and break the law. And the number, if you took 100 immigrants that illegally crossed into America and you started walking down the line, I think most, we'll say Northerners, they're like, oh yeah, it's like, 90 Mexicans and then 10 South Americans or Central Americans. And you're like, that's not it, man. I mean, half of them are Chinese. A third of them are from Southeast Asia. There's a few Eastern Europeans. There's definitely some people from the Middle East in there. And if you run them, you'll probably find them on some specific lists, like terror watch lists. Run them. There is public information about the number of people on the terror watch list that have been trapped or been caught on the border. And that's the ones that we know that we caught. The much, much larger number is the getaways, the ones that got away that we never caught. And we just have to assume that that number is based off the ones that we caught. So if we caught, let's say 10,000 got through, of that 10,000, we caught 1,000. That means that there's 9,000 that have made through. Now, what percentage of those, of that, is that group are radical, violent, extremist terrorists or insurgents or spies? Like, if we just go off the number that we caught, that is a frightening number, like a daunting. I've been saying it time and time again, like Sheepdog Response, my training company. I'm like, people need to wake up and start getting trained. Not because I own this company, because I'm very fearful of what the next few years are going to look like about the number of people that have made it into America via our southern border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as we walked into this, the thing I looked at you and said, I feel like we have a moral obligation to warn Americans about what is happening in our border. I mean, people are just living their lives, worried about what's happening, overseas, and, putting the blue and yellow flag or whatever flags they want. And our borders are so porous. It's so frightening. 8 million illegal immigrants, at least we know, 8 million illegal immigrants came in over the last 3 years. So you live in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think of Texas as the land of freedom, people who are very concerned about what's happening. Yet the Texas border is the most porous border that we need to worry about. There's this whole fight where they wanted to put a wire over the river, was the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
And they took it down for some environmental reason or something.
The American government sued the state of Texas. So the state of Texas, like, back to manning issues, Texas Department of Public Safety, the police officers, their state troopers, they all are taking turns working the border. So it is a gigantic state, like a huge plot. It takes you 14 hours to drive across the state. Every police officer in the whole entire state that works for the state has to spend time at the border. A state active guard mission where they activate the Texas National Guard to go to the border via Operation Lone Star. That is all Texas money that is paying for all of those things. That is no federal money. That is taxpayers from Texas paying via property tax or within the state financing everything that's happening on the border. And they're trying everything. They're building walls. They're putting up concertina wires. They're taking connexes and lining the rivers. You've seen some of the shows of force that were demonized by the press, where you saw people on horseback. They're doing all of those things, and they're doing it out of Texans' pockets because they think that's the right thing. One of those solutions was putting in a fence in the river to keep people from crossing. And the federal government sued the state of Texas and forced them to remove it. Texas is doing the best it can with the resources that it has and the personnel that it has. If you send a guy that lives in Dallas and that was a trooper in Dallas to the Rio Grande Valley, which is 10 hours, 12 hours away from his family, and he has to work down the border, how long is that guy going to stay a police officer before he becomes a Dallas PD officer? So you're also dealing with, on the National Guard side, how much money does the state have to pay for the National Guard? Because that's not federal Title X money. That's state money for a state active guard mission. These are hard, complex problems that our governor is trying to fix.
Why did the federal government sue Texas for protecting the borders?
Yeah, they want these people to come into our country.
Why? Is our government completely compromised?
I think that they are complicit with the immigration issue. These are solvable problems. You can fix that border. You can build walls. You can finance the appropriate number of people to secure that border, forcing them to make it financially. And from the cartel's perspective, they're like, okay, it costs me this much to pay a trafficker to move a person. This is how much I make. This is how much I make when I move drugs. Just on a P&L sheet, it's like lots of money coming in, not a lot of expenses. You would have to make it financially impossible for a cartel member to want to smuggle via the southern border. They just have to figure out a different avenue.
So I want to ask you some maybe personal questions about your experience at war. war is obviously an evil place, and you've seen some terrible violence. Can you share some of those things that you've seen with me, and what kind of impact these sites have had on you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not belittling or disparaging and never comparing like one trauma to another. But this generation of men that fought the war on terror truly saw terror. This we're fighting the caliphates and Al Qaeda and Taliban, and they would do evil just for the sake of doing evil. So finding men literally drilled and screwed to the wall with their eyelids cut off, with their dead family in front of them that had clearly been raped and murdered before he was shot. Babies in concertina wire, small burning bodies. As we were blowing up in the Urzgan Valley in 2008, I ran down to try and grab this guy that was still barely alive. And Taliban came, and my friend Mike saved my life as he killed a bunch of guys. Second Mike in 48 hours that saved my life in a different gunfight. But as I'm trying to like drag this body out from underneath this Humvee that just got blown up by an IED, what I thought were the rest of his legs were just two ammo cans. So when I dragged him, I was like, how is he so light? It's like, oh, he has no legs. So they're blowing off like just below his hips. Like those are hard things for your brain to process, or especially in the moment, you're dealing with overpressure and the stress and the cortisol and the adrenaline of the whole entire thing. And you're trying to do this right thing. Like, how is this person so light? Those are things that just stay with you, like the smells and the sounds of war. And they scar you for forever. Men that struggle with mental health after war, it's like there's this dark cloud that's following them, that's always in chaos. And anytime with the right type of friction, it sets off that lightning bolt that triggers that memory. It might be a smell, it might be a sound, it might be a movement, it might be an angle of somebody walking up to them. There's millions of things that could trigger them, but it's always on them and it's always there with them. My book, Scars and Stripes, like the stripes in the military you earn through service. And similarly, the scars that you get on the inside and the outside, you earn through service. And those are scars that are forever part of you.
How do you recover from having those scars and live a normal life?
Service and discipline. I'm truly blessed. Am I perfect? No. Do I wake up in a sweat and my wife's looking at me like, "Hey, you gonna be good?" Once every few years, the war nightmare, the war terror dream. I'm very disciplined in all the little things. Like, I exercise every single day. I eat clean. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm faithful to my wife. I try to be a good, intentional, loving parent. I try to be a good employer. I'm proud to see all of these men and women that work for us, like, have homes, have their own families. But really, it's service. Finding ways to give back is, for me, one of the best things that you can do for healing. All those other things contribute to coping mechanisms, right? I'm able to deal with stress. I'm able to deal with the stress of those experiences. It keeps me healthy. It keeps my brain working. But really, like, finding ways to give back to the communities that I have had the privilege and honor of working with and serving, like, that is where I find true joy and true healing. Where, like, a guy that I know is struggling, that went through something like me, and I'm able to help him in any way, shape, or form, whether he knows it or not. The last thing I need is recognition, but more importantly, just to see him start succeeding and see him start finding the realization of his own dreams or his own healing. Give me that all day long. That's a drug that I can hit every day.
Yeah. It's so not a cliche. And people might be listening and saying, oh, you just want to sound good. And it sounds so nice. But truly, truly, we've worked with people with all kinds of trauma. And the way for them to come out of trauma is to take that pain and turn it into something beautiful and hand it to another human being and watch that grow. It is so incredible how if you can take your pain and turn it into a light for another person, that is the way you heal.
Yeah. Pain can be a compelling, powerful force for good. And I would not go back and every single one of these failures and every single one of these mistakes and every single one of these deep, deep scars that were caused by pain. I wouldn't go back and change anything, because now those things it's the fuel and it's the catalyst for me to be able to serve that to other people and have, through service, see them avoid pain or be healed from pain. And in a way that, like, is a little ointment on my own scar that just makes it a little bit less painful.
Are we able to provide that kind of guidance to other Green Berets or veterans in the United States who come back?
It's tough.
How do we provide this medicine? I mean, I guess it's the book, right? The book is first step, right? Of looking at
It's a great book.
those
But
experiences.
there's Mike Glover, Evan Hafer, Matt Best, Jared Taylor, Jocko Willink, right? The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
All these really wildly successful men. Let's be really clear. They struggle too. But they do more for the veteran community, and they give back to, I couldn't even list the number of organizations that I have personally seen Evan, Matt, Jared, Rocco, Mike give, not just philanthropically, like actual dollars, but the amount of time that they have dedicated to try and helping service members, it's remarkable. And they're doing it just like I am, for our own healing, but also because it's intrinsically the right thing to do. Right? They have seen financial success from Black Rifle Coffee to Origin to Jocko's amazing books, Extreme Ownership. And they then pivoted their success to then give back to the communities that they came from for the things that we're struggling with. Like my generation is fighting cancer, obviously mental health and suicide, and they are pouring resources into combating those things, just like you would expect real warriors to do. Like those guys are absolute warriors.
Yeah. It's great that they're able to take that pain and then serve others.
Yeah. That's what we're supposed to do.
I don't believe that America will be taken down by tanks and bullets, but it could be taken down from within through the Marxification of our institutions. We're seeing Marxism in our education systems. We're seeing it in Hollywood. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
We don't have a TV in my house. We don't have a TV in my house because a few years ago, there was nothing I could find that didn't have propaganda. I mean, it was like Goebbels had come into Hollywood and started advising everybody about how to, like, the minister of propaganda for the Nazi Party is as if they consulted with him about the best ways to in a very sneaky way start slipping in poison. And it is so dangerous, and it's everywhere that you look. It's in advertising, it's in promotions, it's in kids' cartoons, it's in children's books. Like, there is a little effort pushing back, but nowhere near enough. It's in our schools, it's in our universities, it's in the teachers' unions, it's in the administrators. Like, they knew exactly where to target, and that was the young, vulnerable, and impressionable. And that's where they've been hitting it hard for the past 20 years. And we're too busy working and fighting wars to pay attention with how subtly these Marxist ideas were implanted into an entire generation.
It's partially why you started Apogee School.
Yeah, big reason why.
It's another frontier which you're fighting on. You have little kids too, right?
I do, yep. I have 4 amazing children, madly in love with all 4 of them, beautiful daughters and beautiful son. And seeing my daughters who are of college age, what they had to experience, like, hey, you have to take this experimental vaccine to be able to attend the university. Like, you have to write this project. You have to write it on this topic. You have to go to this protest if you want to receive these extra points. Like, they're absolutely trying to create little radicals. And this was in college. And then I go, even in Texas, where I would see the most idiotic trans reading time, where they'd go to the library or go to the school and walk through the library and see the books that are on the children age shelves, for the 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-olds, and you're going through these books like, why do I have two mommies? I'm all about loving everybody. Like I pride myself in being like a real American where like, if my neighbor's gay, like I will bake them a rainbow cake and I will be the best neighbor that I could possibly be. But if they're telling me what I have to believe, or we have a line in the sand on being an American, and you've now crossed that line into what I have to believe and what I have to think and what I can say. And they've done that with our children. And they've done it very, very effectively and strategically. And so I started Apogee with my partner, Matt Boudreau. We had kind of two initial efforts. One was the physical school, which is Apogee Cedar Park. And then we had an online mentorship program that first started with young men. How do you change a tire? How do you change the oil in your car? What does it look like to get up early every single day and exercise, and then journal it, and then journal what you're working out? Here's a reading list of some books that are incredible and empowering. And here's some books that we're not going to tell you better disagree with. But we want you to be such a critical thinker that you can read something that is like maybe even amoral, and you can look at it and be like, man, why was this the reading list? And then you guys have debates about it Socratically and come to this realization that like, oh, there's some really dangerous ideas about this. We have to be aware of these things. So with the physical location and the online mentorship program, we then added, after dads, we added women. We're adding young women next. And then this year we opened to affiliates, and we'll be opening 50 new schools in 24. And so a movement doesn't even begin to describe, we're 2 years old, and we'll be opening 52 schools. We'll have 52 schools next year in our third year of existence. And that will be 10 times 10 next year. And it will continue to get just silly.
Is it all over the country? Is it mostly in Texas?
Oh no, it's all over.
That's it.
Yeah. It's even cooler. I'm as proud. Man, I love the kids in this school. We call them heroes in the school. Each one of them is on their own journey of becoming a critical thinker. But the locations of some of these schools, they're exactly where you'd think for some of them. Like in Montana and Idaho and Utah and in Florida, like a lot of freedom-loving places. There's a ton in California. There's a ton in Washington. There's a ton in Oregon, where parents are waking up and being like, I am not going to allow my children to be force-fed these radical ideas. Like, I want a critical thinker. I don't want a lemming. I don't want a consumer. I want somebody that's going to be a contributing member of society, that is going to have the pride and courage to know what right and wrong is, to have the morals and the integrity and the ability to create. That is something that has not happened in 20 years. You walk into my school, one, there's no desks. Kids are sitting anywhere that they want. There's like overstuffed chairs, but in every single corner you hear laughter, you see smiles, and you see them learning. Like the joy of learning is present. We do project-driven learning, and we do Socratic. So it's a truly learner-driven environment. So the kids are kind of running the show. These heroes in there, we have guides, not teachers. Guides are in there trying to keep like the wheels on the buggy that's going down the road, but the kids are driving it. And one example is, we had a project last year. We said, you have to create a product. So the project was this. They had to create their own product. They had to take that product to market. They had to market that product, promote that product, get publicity on that product, sell that product. And then they had to brief the school the performance of that product. So like, here's how much money I made. Here's the revenue. This was my cost. This is how much money I borrowed from my parents. We had some examples. We had this one beautiful little girl. She took mason jars and she filled it with kinetic sand. And then she went and bought these little figurines, and each one of them was themed. So there was like a dinosaur kinetic sand, and then there was like an astronaut one. And then she sold them for $25 at the farmer's market. And she made a ton of money. She made like a couple $1,000s at the farmer's market. Another girl made candles and soap. She did it with her mom. She took a loan from her dad to buy the products, and went and like trimmed different herbs to add into the soap and into the candles. And she was selling these homemade candles for $20, $30 a candle. And she sold a ton of candles. And then there's little Jimmy. Jimmy went out and he found little pieces of wood and he carved what he thought looked like guns. And he took them to the farmer's market and he didn't sell one of them. And he was embarrassed. And, Jenny made a couple $1,000s.
Mm.
Jimmy made no dollars because his product stunk. And it is such a priceless lesson. We've been trying to cushion all these kids, giving them participation awards.
Trophies.
That's not how you learn. You learn by failure, and you learn by embarrassment, and you learn by pain. And there, every single day, they're making all the decisions. What pen to use, what pencil to use, what chair to sit on. If they don't go out inside and play on the play gym, it's because of their choices and their immediate responses. And they're like, what? And then they're mad. And you're like, well, why are you mad? You're not mad. You're not mad at me because I'm not letting you go and play. You just have to finish your work, and you didn't finish your work. And here's the reasons why you didn't. And those things happen so rapidly when that's the environment to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of very controversial education philosophies, and partially is why I left the traditional education background. And partially when I look at people like you who come from a very interesting, to say the least, background, right? I think that we can collect a lot of lessons from that in the way that we're coddling young Americans. And also, I would say, over-specializing Americans. And so I have this education philosophy where I used to argue with a lot of parents who would say, well, my child should only do one sport this season because it's going to confuse them if they do more than one sport. And I would say, no, I actually think life doesn't work that way. And you should put your kids in a bunch of different types of sports and have them do a bunch of different things, because life is not about just specialization. If you look at some of the worst doctors, these are the doctors who can't look at your entire body, but they're just overly specialized. And you have the same situation when you run a business. So I run a business with 100 and almost 50 employees here. And I try to make it a point that people do more than one thing.
Yeah.
Because when people are over specialized, they don't build instinct. Not only is it absolutely boring, but you don't build instinct and you don't become a problem solver. You look at a Green Beret, right? A person who is both an entrepreneur, a fighter, a warrior, a father. Why do you have this ability to decipher? It is because you've built an instinct, and it's because your brain is wired to compute multiple experiences and multiple skills. But the way our education system is built is this assembly line where you don't create fibers between the different elements of what you're learning. And if we raise a society that just goes through you learn math, and then separately you learn literacy, and then separately you only do one sport per semester.
Yeah.
That is not how society is built. And our education system is built like a hardware store.
Well, it's funny that the Rockefellers, the reason that our education is set the way that it is set is for that exact reason. They wanted laborers. They wanted assembly workers. They wanted consumers and people that would keep be another cog in the wheel. And the reason it's organized the way that it is by design. And that is not the product that we need. That is not the product that can collaborate, that can compute, that can critically think, that can create, that can build, that can get us back to the moon. Those are the people that we need. There's a reason that there's been a really long time where America has been declining in our prominence internationally, both intellectually and financially. And if it doesn't shift back soon, I'm in fear of what America is going to look like in 10 years.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we're really worried about is the defeminization of our society, of women, and the demasculinization of our young men, right? Where their men are taught to be fearful and frankly squishy, and boys are afraid to be masculine men. And then women are taught that we shouldn't want to get married and have children because we want to be feminist. And feminist means you don't have kids and you don't want to be with a man because you don't need a man, right? And this is what our schools are teaching. And I think, these systems are so rotten that we just need to start anew. I love that you guys are just starting something brand new. And I love that there are universities that are just starting new. And, at PragerU, we started a new media company because the media, like you said, you can't have a TV in your household because the TVs are projecting content that is rotten to its core.
Yeah, and absolutely lies. Just falsehoods of what truth is. And that, it's not going to exist in my home. You're absolutely right. And I don't understand why you would take two things that are so beautiful and perfect, and that is a man and a woman, the way that they were made. And then you would demonize them, call the real versions of them abominations. And when that is the most perfect form that they can be. Like a feminine woman is a powerful, incredible force for good. When they're in doing what they're made to do, it's a beautiful thing to be part of that, and to be able to contribute to a woman that wants to do the thing that she wants. And how is that not feminism, to ensure that the thing that they want to do, that they're able to do? But then society is saying that the thing that you want to do isn't the thing that you should be doing, because you should be doing this other thing, like sitting at a desk and, telling other people what to do, because like that's what these other men did. No, like, do what you want to do. And if you want to be a mom, be the best mom that you can possibly be, because it's the most beautiful thing, the most rewarding thing. And I could never do it, not for a minute, because I'm wired different. Can I be the best dad that we've ever seen on this planet? That's my objective effort. Is I'm going to try in every way, shape, and form to be the most caring, intentional, considerate, contributing member to my family. But can I do what my wife does? No, like not on my best day. I think I'm a pretty capable, brilliant, hardworking dude. Not with every gift that God has given me could I do what she does in a heartbeat of a day. She's so much more capable to do so much more than me in so many different ways. Similarly, I can run through that wall and kill everyone on the other side. There's nothing that could get near my family. I can provide for them. I can preserve and I can protect them, because that's what I was made for. To be able to preserve human life and to be able to protect those that can't protect themselves, to be able to provide for my family. And that is a beautiful masculine thing. Mm-hmm. And anybody that thinks anything else, I respect your opinion, and like live your life the way that you live your life, but you're also an idiot. Like, you're missing out on the joy. It is the joy to see, like, when you come home, you've worked all day long, like got a workout in, and your wife looks at you, and you're like, yeah, I still got it, right? Then your son, he looks at you a little bit different, with pride and excitement, like, that's my dad. And my daughter just screams. Ah! She does it every day. Every day I walk through that door, screams my name no matter where she is. Mm-hmm. She's sprinting through the whole entire thing. My big daughters now, as they're coming back from school, like wanting intentional time to take them out on dates, that intimate connection, because they know that this is going to be the standard of what they're going to look for in their permanent partner, their husband. They want to look like this. So I have to meet that. And they've seen every single one of my failures. They've seen every one of my successes. Like, we need that. We need men again, and we need women again. And we so desperately need them to be different, and they're beautifully different.
Yeah, completely. Your wisdom
I got a lot of that.
Comes from your calluses. Yeah. You went through all of this adversity and pain. You've seen horror. You've seen violence. How do we teach the wisdom that you have without wanting our children to have those kinds of calluses? Or do they have to go through adversity and pain in order to get there? It's one of those really hard things that parents like us have to reconcile with. You did not have an easy childhood. Neither did I. Yeah. And I don't want my kids to have the childhood that I had.
How, Marissa, do you learn patience? Do I give you everything that you need and it happens immediately?
No, you just have to live and suffer a little bit.
That's right.
And build the resilience, right?
Yeah. If I want you, so that's how we learn patience. If I want you to become strong, do I put you in a bubble? No, I have to make you suffer. Yeah. I have to make you work. I have to make you lift. If I want you to have resolve and grit, is that just going to be a naturally occurring thing as you order your Uber Eats that brings it to your door? No, you have to go out and work for it. So I totally sympathize and am empathetic with, like, I want my kids not to endure pain and to suffer. But I know on the far side of hard work are all of the things that they're going to want in their life. And the only way that they're going to get those things, to be able to set a goal and achieve those goals, are through suffering, through hard work, through discipline. And, even my 8-year-old right now, as he's going to play his sport. Like he knows that he's never going to pick up a participation trophy, that he doesn't want it. He doesn't want the second place medal. He'll leave it on the table because he wants to be the best version of himself and he wants to see success. And I watched that young man out there for hours and hours every single day with his best buddy, which is his lacrosse stick or his hockey stick, as he plays multiple sports, to your point. And that's intrinsic. So how do you plant this desire to have grit that is naturally occurring within somebody? It is not easy. It's so black and white to me that, especially with parenting and education, like here's where we see developing young minds that can become incredible humans. And here's pandering and catering, entitled, broken, misguided, lack of direction, struggling with mental health, struggling with substance abuse. And when you draw the line between those things and you look at the approaches between these very conflicting approaches to raising children, both in school and at home, you can't paint a more clear picture about why so quickly we need to be shifting back to this traditional hard work, multi-sport, multi-discipline, project-driven, Socratic. How do we take a young man that comes off the street and turn him or her into a soldier or a Marine or an airman? It's discipline and it's painful and there's suffering there. And I want that for my kids. I want them to know success, and I know they'll never see success if I do everything for them.
Is what the military has been doing for people our age still working? Is the military still a good place to send our kids to? I've asked this of multiple people who've been through, their military experience, and I've gotten multiple answers. Some people said, well, the military has changed. It's become infected with the woke virus. There's a lot of the DEI stuff there.
Yeah.
And then with that said, I see people like you who are still in the military and still hold these values of grit and hard work. And what are your thoughts for people who are contemplating sending their kids to the military?
When I went in, we went in peak war, right? We'd just been attacked, planes slammed into buildings, people jumped to their death, and this entire generation walked to the recruiter's office and said, whoever did this, please fly me there so I can kill all of them. That was my generation of war. So yeah, it's totally changed. We're not at war right now. We are, we are at war, just not in a recognized war.
A war of ideas.
Yeah. The military has always been I think, on the forefront of some very social, controversial issues. First Black pilots to go to combat, the first breaking of all segregation. All these things happen in the military. So I love that it is a progressive place where we can really, in real sense, be inclusive, where it's like merit-based everything. If you can do the job, then you can do the thing. It doesn't matter your race, religion, creed, your beliefs. Like, can you do the job? That's still there.
Equality, not equity.
Yeah. I think about two my big girls right now, and I think they both kill it. I think they'd be amazing in the Air Force. And I've fed that a few times. My son, he says he's going to be going to the Naval Academy and he's going to go fly jets and he's going to be playing hockey and lacrosse there. He's 8. And I'm like, do you want to do that? How about just hear me out? How about chess and architecture?
You're starting to sound like me.
Yeah. That's great. Like 2 violent sports where you get to smash people with these gigantic sticks. And then you're going to fly fighter jets in a country that I'm really worried about right now. Or, what about you do ballet? And he just laughs.
No, not with your DNA. No,
not a chance.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about masculinity. One of my biggest concerns right now is the demasculinization of men. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I sat down with a bunch of women that work here at PragerU. They're all beautiful, smart, and they're describing dating as just this abysmal scene where men don't know what to do. They don't know how to ask women out on a date. They don't know how to behave like men. They're apologetic for being men. So you're seeing this in the dating scene. you're seeing this issue with military, right? The lack of the inability to recruit young men into the military.
The ones that we get keep getting hurt because they're
soft and squishy and probably fat, if I can just say that too.
They're fat.
So, we're raising young, fat, squishy men who just want to live in a virtual world and don't want to actually pursue real relationships that will bring them actual meaning. How do we fix this?
I got girls that are young 20-year-olds right now that are echoing the exact same experiences. Like, will real men please stand up? I am blessed in the environments that I'm in, security, military, training, preparedness, on the NGO side, on the philanthropic side, and on the education side, like those are all the exceptions. It's this tiny little group of people. Some of our new school owners are fierce. These are, like, they walked in, we just had a gala a couple of days ago. They walked in, they had like these gigantic beards and they're like these jack dudes. I'm like, you're going to be opening a school. This is so sick. It's like, also don't try to like any shenanigans at that school, because that dude will like tear your face off and wear your skin as a birthday suit. Like, it's so cool to see like men showing up, but they're the minority. I think it's been intentional. So TikTok, I travel a ton. I have some burner phones, and like I have my everyday carry phone, and then I have my travel abroad phone that has different VPNs, so I can bounce off whatever place I want to be when I'm in that place. So if I'm in China, I'm going to use a China-based VPN and with a China-based phone, right? And the things that are fed to that phone compared to what's fed to my American phone via the same app, over there, it's like strength is good. Family's important, virtues and integrity of being a good citizen. And then here it's like drugs, cars, porn, all of the things that erode the fundamentals of society, that erode masculinity, are being force fed to me as a man onto my phone. And our enemy is literally doing it in real time. You get to take this black and white A/B test right here, A and B, and you're like, these could not be more dissimilar. Yeah. And that is what our enemies want. They want us weak. They want our men to be cowards and to be soft and to be broken and to be addicted to substance abuse, to porn. The tail to that coin, it is the most meaningful thing that you can possibly do, is to be able to provide in a meaningful way to your family, to community, to your church, to your tribe. There's something that is just wired in our DNA. We're put here to do it. And then when you do it, and that is your purpose, it is so fulfilling. To lay down at night next to that beautiful woman that you worked all day to provide for, and she's grateful for you, and like to see the joy in your kids' faces when you get up. You've already worked out, you come back in, hop in the cold plunge, walk in, you're making them breakfast, and they wake up and they're like, it's just like, what else is there in life, in this little blink of an eye that we're on this planet for, than that?
What could be more attractive than a man who takes care of himself physically, that can protect, that is fearless, that can handle pain, that doesn't whine and complain all the time, that can stand up for you, protect you, allow you to be a woman, right? That is the most attractive character in a man, not a man who is squishy, standing there putting eye cream and moisturizer, staring at themselves for an hour while trying different Gucci suits on. Like, who sold these men on this nonsense?
Our enemies.
Our enemies. Our enemies. This is why, it is so important that people who watch this or follow your work start thinking critically. Let's raise good young women and good young men, so we actually have a real future here in America. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for what you do. I think we can do this.
I think we can too.
I'm super excited about people like you who are stepping into the arena. You're not only protecting Americans around the world, but what you're doing here in the U.S. through your service. And I know that your service has been part of your healing. And we are just grateful. We are so grateful. And we need more people like you. So thanks for being a beacon of light.
I'm not going anywhere.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm hard to kill, so I'm just going to keep on going.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you, Tim.